What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Roach, and I'm with Mixing with Metal, and today I'm mixing one of and it's shot, so I'm sorry, but I'm gonna mix one of your songs today. So if you guys didn't know, for the past few months I've offered mix critique services. Basically what happens is you send me a mix and then you send me unprocessed stems of that mix, and I will critique it and then give some general ideas of how I would mix from these stems. Obviously there's not a lot I can do with 4 tracks, but I'll show you some general principles like that. It costs 25 bucks. Anyone's available to do it, and the link to do it is in the description below. If you want me to make a video like this, I can. If you don't want me to make a video like this, I can just send you some notes, whatever you're most comfortable with. So this is the first one we're doing. It comes courtesy of Yusef, and the song is called Isle of the Dead. So I have the unprocessed stems on the bottom, I have the processed stems on the top, and I'm going to make these inactive and go ahead and just listen to some of this song. Cool. So we have that rocking, and the first thing I'm gonna point out in this, and I'll be jumping down to these unprocessed versions as I go to demonstrate some of the techniques I'm talking about. So the first thing that I noticed with this, the guitar tone is really muddy, and the drums lack impact. The bass is pretty good. The low end is good, as far as the bass goes. I think the kick drum and the low end and the bass could be tighter when combined together, and I'll explain kind of how to do that with these stems. I don't know if I 100% can do it without having the separate kick track, but I'll try my best. And yeah, those are the general things I noticed. Guitars are muddy, drums lack impact, but the bass sounds pretty good where it's sitting right now. It's not too overpowering and it's not too lacking either. So let's start out the top. Let's start with the drums here. So I'm gonna play some of these in solo and just get an idea for how they're sounding. Cool. So first thing would be the actual processing, specifically of the kick and snare. I think that you could stand to compress them just a little bit more. These sound sampled, and so you can bring up some of, for instance, with the snare, some more of the overtones in it. Maybe use a different sample. Maybe blend some samples on the kick, something like that, just to give the kick and snare a different sound. Right now they sound pretty stock, and I would be interested to hear different sounds on that. So try out a few different samples, blend them together, and then compression. I would slam both the kick and the snare through a compressor pretty hard. With close miking, what you want to do is you want to have a compressor with a slow attack, fast release. So essentially what you're doing is letting the transient come through and then clamping down immediately after that, increasing the dynamic range and giving a perceived harder hit. That would be a good place to start. EQ wise, things sound good. I did notice that with the kick drum, it sounds like you maybe dialed back the top end a little bit, and I would venture to say that you probably did that because it maybe sounded too offensive or like it was sticking out of the mix too much. A good way to get past that is to actually use instead of using like extreme top end like around 7 or 8K, use something in the upper mids, around 8 to 2K maybe. And I have a video about that on how to mix a metal kick drum that I'll link in the description below to demonstrate that, how it can mix with guitars and add a lot of impact to the drums or the kick drum without making it stick out too much. So those are the first things I noticed from a purely EQ compression kind of processing standpoint. Now the next thing, I'll play these again and then I'll talk about it. Now I'm not sure on the drums you're using if there's a room built in or if you added a reverb after the fact, but I can definitely hear that reverb in there. It sounds very digital. You don't want that on drums. On metal drums, you want to have little to no reverb at all, actually. Most of the time when I mix drums, there's maybe some reverb on the toms and on the kick, but never on the full kit. And a lot of times I don't even use the kick and toms. What I do is use room tracks. So if you if this whatever you're using doesn't have a room track available, or if that is the room track, go without it, and then try and add samples of room tracks. I have a video called how to make your snare sound explosive, I think it is. I'll link it in the description below. That will show you kind of how to do that, and how a stereo room sample on close mics can really add impact to your drums. So cool. So that's the process. Let's do the let's go ahead and jump to the unprocessed here, and I will do some of the things I demonstrated. I can't do all of them because I only have the stem here, but I will try my best. So these are the unprocessed drums. Let's go to the part we were talking about before. All right, so it definitely sounds like that reverb is baked in. So that's all right. We'll try and work around that. First thing I'm going to do is go for some compression. So let's see. Let's find my SSL compressor. And then I'm just going to dial this in and try and slam the drums a little bit. Let me try something different. I'm going to actually use... Nope. There we go. Oh, this is new. I've never seen this loading screen before. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and reach for FG stress so I can do some parallel. Plus, I want to slam these really hard. All right, so that's a good start to them. Unfortunately, we are bringing up that reverb in there, but we'll try and work around it. Next thing I'm gonna do is try and give some life to them. I'm gonna, let's try this Hollywood preamp and see what this does. All right, so that's a good start. Let's go ahead and reach for an EQ here. I'm gonna actually, I'm gonna try something a little bit interesting here. I'm gonna go for, actually no, I'm just gonna go for hammered EQ. All right, and then this may not work, but instead of using since I don't have individual drums and I can't add room samples to each, I'm going to go ahead and try a gated reverb. And so it would be like using the room samples that's already baked into, or the room reverb that's already baked into here, but instead gate it so that you don't have the reverb spilling over each other and creating a mess. So where do we have here? Rock drums, gated room. All right, let's try a 5-second. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't work, especially with both of them over there. Try gating your reverbs though, if you're having some issues with room sounds. The last thing I'm going to do is just open up Pro Q2 here and see if I can find any problem frequencies. So basically what I've done so far, I've compressed, add some saturation, there's some overall EQ with hammer, and then I'm going to do some cleanup with Pro Q2. All right, all I really need to do is add that filter at the bottom. All right, so let's see what I came out with and what Yusef came out with. I'm gonna change my solo mode here. Cool. So here's mine. And listening back, I probably need to dial back this low end a little bit. Cool. So now we start out. The drums sound more open. They sound, I guess, giving them, instead of just, having them totally washed out with these, there's not a whole lot I can do to negate that room sound. Just try and go without that reverb in the future. Next, let's move on to the bass. So this is Yusef's bass. All right, so that sounds like MIDI. First off, I would recommend whatever you're using, try and use something else if possible. I like Zombass a lot. This sounds programmed. A Zombass sounds very natural. It's just a bass DI, and I've had really good results with it. It doesn't sound too fake or anything like that. So it sounds good. I think that you could do a little bit more with it though. So. All right, so it's not bad, and so I don't have much to critique on it necessarily, but I will show you how I would process it. So, it's very telling. Good on you, number one, for getting rid of whatever frequency that I'm noticing immediately. It's like in the low mids. Yeah, right there. All right, so right there, I'm gonna dip it out, and then actually I'm gonna have to do something a little interesting here. So, with bass, this is what I was talking about earlier with the low end of the kick drum. Is you want to decide whether your bass is going to sit above or below your kick drum. Meaning, frequency-wise, is the low end of your kick drum going to sit higher or is it going to sit lower than the bass, or vice versa? And so in this case, I'm gonna have the bass go above the kick drum, and so I'm gonna bring it a filter into about 66 here. As you notice, it's cleaning up those extreme subs so that that kick drum here, I'll bypass it, bring it in with the bass. I mean with the drums, and you'll see what I mean. Oh, I need to change my soloing mode. Actually sounds like the low end's bigger, even though I'm taking that stuff out. So that's number one. So let's listen to this again. All right, so that's what I'm going to start out with here. I would normally compress, but I don't really need to compress this. But I am going to add some distortion. So I have a video how to get an aggressive bass tone that you can watch to get a full instruction on this. But where in the world is it? Saturn, there it is. But I'll just do it quick and dirty here. No, that sounds horrible right now. Bear with me. We're gonna have to load up a impulse response. So let's see here. Where is IR? There we go. IR1. Great. Import impulse response from file. Let's go ahead through here. Drive takes a minute to load. Hopefully Protos doesn't. There we go. MPEG VST, or MPEG SVT, not VST. This is the one I generally go with. It requires 2 more channels. Okay. Great. Just check this direct signal, uncheck the early reflections in the tail. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and reach for some multiband compression to clean up that low end and keep it under control. Cool. And so let's go ahead and compare these the original bass and the new bass really quick. So here's my bass. And it's kind of hard to compare them directly because mine's distorted, his isn't. But for instance, let's go ahead and do the drums and bass together to see how those sound. Cool. So that's where we're at with that. All right. Let's continue on. Sorry, I know this is going to be a long video. I should have warned you head up up front that this is going to be a long video. Change my solo mode, and let's go to the rhythm guitars. Oh, which the rhythm guitars, the solo probably the same, so this is probably our last thing. All right, first and foremost, please use a different guitar tone. Not to say this is the absolute worst guitar tone in the world, but you could do a lot better. I think that it's lacking a lot of mid-range. It's very tinny. It doesn't have any girth to it. It's way over distorted. All sorts of stuff. So this critique just to help you improve. But I would highly recommend that in the future, especially for a rhythm guitar tone, dial back the highs a little bit. Don't be afraid to have some mid-range in there. Don't be afraid to have some lows in there. And definitely dial back the gain. Our goal with rhythm guitars is to have them be tight. Even in metal, with distorted guitars, we still want them tight, and that means backing off on the gain. You lose definition, you lose a lot of things, and so you'll go to mix them later, and you'll have problems. The principle with rhythm guitars for the most part is that you really don't want to do much with them, if anything at all. And so getting a good tight tone at the source is super important. So just make sure you do that. That's my big critique with it. I will try and do what I can in processing these guitars, but dial back on the gain, mess the EQ a little bit, and what I would do is listen to super heavily isolated guitar tracks, or heavily isolated, super heavy guitar tracks that are isolated, that you can kind of compare your own tone to, and see where you're at, and that will help you kind of dial down EQ for them. So let's go and make active this other guitar track, or the unprocessed one. If you guys can tell, I'm actually exhausted. And let's listen to it. So actually, it sounds like some decisions you made in post did really impact the guitar sound. So let's jump and dial, kind of dig through this. So let's see. First and foremost, I'm just gonna reach for an EQ more to just see what's going on a frequency wise, actually do anything. That's number one. Just isolated that problem frequency really quick. Let's see if we can find any more. So here's what I'm doing: rolling off the extreme lows, boosting some low end, cutting out these two problem frequencies, and I'm going to follow that up with some multi-band compression to deal with that low end to make it more consistent. I want the low end in there, and then I want to tame it. So it actually sounds like a lot of these are probably decisions made here and not on the individual track. This guitar tone still needs some work, but it's much better than what you ended up with here. And so really it's less is more with guitars. A few things here, and All right. Trying to think of what else I could do here. Maybe I could add a little bit of top end. Let's see. All right, that's going to be it for the guitars. Last thing, I'm just going to copy these over to the lead guitars and see what we come out with. One thing I should notice, I generally do follow up guitars with a limiter. All right, cool. And that's it. All I did was add a limiter to them. I'm going to go ahead and group these together and then group these together, and we're going to do a before and after. See Yusef's mix and then what could happen. Even with just 4 tracks, of course, a lot more improvement can come when processing the individual tracks as well. So let's start with Yusef's and then we'll go to mine. I'm not super happy with the guitar tone I came out with, but again, don't want to process guitars too much, so at that point I'd probably just go back and reamp the guitars or add a different amp sim or whatever you have. So yeah, there you go. That's your mix critique, Yusef. Thank you so much for sending it in. If you guys want to send it in, the link is in the description below. I'd love to check it out and give you guys something like that. I'm going to be running a contest actually for a free mix critique. All you have to do is comment below. Let's see. Comment below your favorite mix. One of your favorite mixes of all time. Whatever it is, comment below, like this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. So if you're subscribed, if you like this video, and you commented your favorite mix below, you'll be automatically entered to win a free mix critique. If you guys don't remember, I also released my very first sample pack, which you could use on these drums or any drums that you want. It includes 4 different drums, a bunch of different, velocity layers, all that stuff. 15 different mics, I think, in total. Yeah, you're going to get a bunch of stuff in there. It's only $15 over at my store, and you can find the link to that in the description below. Once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss anything. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Thumbs down this video if you didn't like it, which I don't know why you wouldn't. And make sure if Yusef is in the comments that you give him some love for being courageous and saying, hey, I want everyone to see my mix, and I want, to get it critiqued so everyone can see. That's pretty brave, and I encourage you guys, I implore you guys to do the same. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.